You'd never know if you have a survival instinct or not until you discover that you have one. And I think I do.
One of the most popular movies of 2025 was F1, the thrilling depiction of F1 racing starring Brad Pitt.
As I discovered during the filming and after the filming of the first Top Gun movie, starring Tom Cruise, summer movies like this have to dramatize certain aspects of their subject, but they still sometimes retain a grain of truth. So we were curious about how the film F1 might have followed that trend. So we were lucky to be connected by a friend to French racer Romain Grosjean. Romain has driven in nearly every possible type of motor racing, including 179 Grand Prix starts.
I did my private pilot license back in 22 or 23, and the instructor was like, have you flown an aircraft before? I said, no, but it feels like a race car, just it moves around and I know what to do. So unusual attitude, they would try to put you anywhere and they're like, yeah, we're here and here and here. How do you know? Well, I just feel it, right?
And he survived a terrible crash in an F1 car that is very reminiscent of the F1 film.
So you're in for a treat, a really fun discussion with a true virtuoso race car driver.
But first, many thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Culligan. Culligan's drinking water systems deliver the superior filtration and refreshing hydration you need to fuel your high-performance lifestyle. Culligan, water you love.
We caught up with Romain at his home in between races.
All right, Romain Grosjean, it's great to have you on the Adrenaline Zone. We love if we can have a race car driver because there's plenty of risk associated with that, and we're just delighted to have you with us today. So appreciate you making the time for us. And we got a ton of questions for you. So I'm going to start it off by asking you what sparked your desire as a kid, I'm assuming, to be a race car driver. You grew up in France. What got you going into racing? Was there any particular advantage that you had growing up as a kid that prepared you for the track?
Yes and no. My grandfather was vice world champion of skiing, so I started skiing. And then, I don't know, probably when I was 8, 10 years old, my dad asked me to stop skiing because he thought it was probably too dangerous and there was some doping stories and,
Yeah, skiing and race car. So let's go to race car driving instead of skiing. I got you.
I didn't go straight to race car. I did BMX for a bit. And then a few conclusions later, my mom asked me to find something else. So this is how I end up doing go-kart. And I had been doing go-kart for fun, but definitely that's where I started being going racing. And that was 26 years ago.
And this was
my first race.
In France?
It was in France. I lived in Geneva, Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland. I'm Swiss and French. I'm known as a French athlete, but I grew up in Switzerland. But luckily, when I was about 8 years old, a racetrack opened about 15 minutes where we lived in France, but really near Geneva. So every Wednesday afternoon, every Saturday morning, I would go to the racetrack and drive go-kart, and I ended up being the fastest kid there. And the people told us, well, you should try to go racing. And I guess that was a good advice.
So how did you get into F1 series racing? Is there some sort of progression? I mean, from go-karts to F1, that's a big, huge difference. And so there must be a progression for that.
Absolutely. They make it easier to understand nowadays. It's called F4, F3, F2, F1.
Okay.
Of course. Yes,
Back in the days, it was a bit different. The names were different, but the character was the same. So I was French champion of Formula 4. I was European champion of Formula 3. I was Asian champion of Formula 2. And then I was leading the Formula 2 championship. And then I got called to go to Formula 1. So yeah, I won pretty much everything and up to Formula 1.
So did someone come to the go-kart track and discover you, or did you have to go out and seek different teams to interview with to get your first break into it?
No, my dad was my mechanic. It's probably the worst mechanic in the world. I love him to death, but it was disastrous. And then I was lucky that he was able to finance the early part of my career. And then I won a scholarship from Lista in Switzerland. And that was my first season in single-seater. That's the only time I actually competed in the Swiss Championship. I won 10 races out of 10 races. I had 10 pole position, 10 fastest lap. So got it all that year. And then the year after I went to Formula Renault French Championship. So that would be F4, right? And then I got into Renault driver development, where I was a Renault driver and made it to where the Formula One was them.
So Romain, as you progress through, obviously it's a prove yourself progression from F4, 3, 2, 1. But I'm sure that along the way, there's an intellectual progression in your own mind that you're learning along the way. So So take us through the steps and what you had to learn in order to handle a high performance racing machine. It's not a lot of little things probably, right?
Yeah, a lot of little things. I mean, you've been flying fast aircraft, very complicated aircraft, and we don't put you straight in F-14. You go in a Cessna 172, and then you go bigger and faster, and so on and so forth, right? So it's kind of the same. The races are 25 minutes when you start, and slow cars, and then they go 45 minutes, and then they go an hour, and then the cars get faster. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to turn 40 this year. I wish I was 20 years old, but with the knowledge and experience that I have today.
No, I've said that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The life would be a lot simpler.
Yeah. So
All that hard-won experience. So did you have a natural hand-eye coordination, or did you have to develop your hand-eye coordination to get to the skill level to manage the kind of dynamics in those really fast cars?
I think that's kind of natural. I've played tennis since I'm a very young kid. I love tennis. So, that's really good for eye and hand coordination. Did it play a role? I have no idea. But I have a really good butt sensor.
Okay.
That's what, it's the same in an aircraft, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So I did my private pilot license back in 22 or 23. And the instructor was like, have you flown an aircraft before? I said, no. But it feels like a race car, it moves around and I know what to do. So unusual attitude, they would try to put you anywhere and like, yeah, we're here and here and here. How do you know? Well, I just feel it, right? So I think that's what's very important in racing is how you feel things through your body and you realize what the vehicle you're in is doing.
I can really relate to that, Romain. I mean, in the F-14, when you're trying to land on an aircraft carrier, the instruments are giving you information, but they're always lagging just a little bit, like they probably are in a race car. And it's your butt that's really telling you, hey, I'm getting a little slow, I'm getting a little faster or whatever. And it is the butt that talks to you first. So I love, we used to literally say that. Your butt tells you what's going on. It's funny to hear somebody in a completely different discipline say the same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Just curious, I don't, in the F1, do you have power steering and all that? I'm not sure, but you've raced IndyCar, which I don't think has power steering. But in terms of physical preparation, I mean, it's not just you step into the car and you're ready to go. There's some training you have to do to be ready to do these very difficult races, right?
Yes, absolutely. So Formula One and IndyCar have actually got two very different training. You mentioned it, Formula One has got a power steering wheel. If it fails, there's no way you're going to turn the wheel. There's so much downforce in those cars that you just can't physically turn the steering wheel. So it's all about your cores and your neck, right? Because you get so much G-forces, 7 G on braking, 5.5 when you turn in high-speed corners. I mean, 4.5, it's just being like in a washing machine. IndyCar is way slower on the corners, even though it's faster on the straight because we do ovals. So we have a very specific configuration for that. The cars are way slower. But there's no power steering wheel and the tracks are bumpy and difficult. So it's a lot more muscular targeted, more shoulders and grip strength and forearms. And rather than Formula One, you're a lot more into the cardiovascular, the neck and the core. So I've learned that. I've adapted my training. I'm a cyclist lover, so I cycle still a lot for the cardiovascular, but I've got to put quite a lot of gym in there.
We were just going to ask you a question about the difference between IndyCar and F1, and I think you just answered that question. Are there any other significant differences between those two venues?
Like a DC-3 and an Airbus 380. There's 30 years of technology of difference. IndyCar, everyone has the same car. The only thing you can change is the dampers. You can develop those. So they've got to an incredible level of grip on the dampers, but the cars they don't need to be the highest of the technology because everyone is buying from the same suppliers. In Formula One, you change every year. You depend a lot of your car. The technology on those are absolutely outstanding. So I would say, in terms of cars, that's the difference. And then, of course, in IndyCar, you had the ovals that we're not used to have in Europe.
First of all, do you have a preference between the two? And F1 must be so much more expensive because so much is changing so fast.
Yeah, I think Formula One is about 10 times more expensive than IndyCar, if not 20 times. But they also travel the world. It's just a different series. I think they both have the pro and the cons. You ask me which one I prefer. It's like when you have a boy and a girl, which one you prefer? They're two different, right? I was lucky to do 10 years in Formula One. I've been lucky now to do another 4 or 5 years in IndyCar. Great fun, kind of different, only racing North America, makes it easy on the travel schedule. But also a lot of fun. And the Indy 500 is of course a monument of racing.
So you mentioned the technology in an F1 car. So can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, how much can you control as a driver? Are there things that are being controlled outside the car? What's sort of the most advanced technology that you consider, critical for the car and how it performs?
So Formula One banned a few years ago. So it's a one-way communication system. So the teams can read everything that's happening on the car, but they're not allowed to send anything to the car. That changed maybe 20 years ago. Also, so before the race, you have to decide all your parameters. There's a lot you can change to the differential. You can play with your differential. You can play with your brake balance. You can play with your brake migration. You can play with your engine braking. I think those are the main one.
So the instrumentation goes one way, but they can talk to you, right? They can
Yes.
say, "Hey, we're seeing this." So how much? I mean, you've got a whole bunch of buttons on the steering wheel, right? It's not just doing this, right? You can manipulate a few settings in the car, can you not? From the cockpit.
Yeah, you can. The way it works is all of those are set up before qualifying, and the time that the Formula One car leaves the garage and goes into the pit lane in qualifying, you're on the parc fermé. So you cannot change any settings, which is very tricky when it's raining one day and drier than the next day, or the opposite way around. So you have in qualifying, you have to prepare for everything you want to have in the race. That's different in IndyCar,
But in the middle of the race, you can't touch anything on your steering wheel, like a pressure or something like that.
Everything that map-wise was in the car prior to qualifying, you can. So you probably have 6 engine braking, 6 brake migration. You have 36 diff position, 6 on entry, 6 on mid, and 6 on exit. That's 18. Sorry for my math. And engine braking, you have 6 bits and pieces that you can play with.
With respect to the safety of the cars, then that's probably part of the technology advancements that the cars have made over the last 20 years. Can you talk a little bit about how the safety of the cars have evolved over time as well?
Yeah, I mean, they've changed dramatically, since early 2000, I want to say, before in Formula One, 1994, Ayrton Senna was the last accident. It was a death until Jules Bianchi in 2014. So that was 20 years. And then after Jules Bianchi, we brought up the Halo in Formula One, which actually saved my life in my accident in Bahrain. In the meantime, the chassis have become stronger. Since my accident, they changed the design of the fuel tank and the fuel tank cap that actually broke, and that's why I got on fire. So every time they always improve technology. Carbon, as the mastering of the carbon, making it lighter, but also more resilient, has been fantastic. So I think all those technology have been insanely good, and they keep improving year after year, helmets, race suits, gloves, name it.
And they enclose the cockpit too in F1?
So that's named the Halo.
Halo, okay.
Yeah, Halo. And then IndyCar, we have an aero screen. So it's a screen in front of the driver. As pro and cons, anything flying on an oval would be good to have the aero screen, but also you have very little airflow in the car. So it gets really hot.
So we'll ask you about Bahrain in a little bit, because that was a really amazing event for you, I know. But before we do that, I kind of want to ask you about what is the sort of culture of a successful racing team, whether it's F1 or IndyCar, maybe there's differences, but how does that culture play into success?
I think it all comes from whoever is leading the team. It's always very difficult to know why someone is a good leader or not. You can tell when they're acting if they are one or not, but it's very difficult to pinpoint on what is it, So I would say that the tree always comes from the roots, and those are the roots. So it's pushing your people to do the best they can, making them feel like they can surpass themselves. We all make mistakes. That's called life, and it's learning from those mistakes and not destroying those people at the time. So I've seen really, really good leaders. I've seen terrible ones. But again, if when I meet someone within 5 minutes, if you ask me if he's won or not, it's going to be difficult. But you can, after a little bit, you can tell. I had the chance one day to have dinner with Arsene Wenger. That if you follow football or soccer in Europe, he's been a Liverpool coach for many, many years. And 45 minutes dinner, I don't know. It was just so impressive to know and see how that person could, within 45 minutes, understand you completely and almost get the best out of you.
You mentioned a little bit about communications between the team and the car. So how do you guys manage that? Because I would imagine it can be distracting, and you probably have to sort out what's really important to communicate. And so what are those kind of things you're trying to talk about during the actual race when your concentration has to be on the road?
Yeah, I mean, the radio communication doesn't always work that great. The quality is very often poor. So you only try to communicate important things. Advices, maybe, if you're using your rear tires too much, they can tell you front tires. If they think there's a setting that's going to help you, a strategy, they ask you how the tires are fitting. So again, they have all the sensors in the world, but you're the one telling them, hey, I can do another 10 laps on those tires, or they're about to die next lap. So please bring me in. So those are the things you talk about, and they always try to talk to you in straight lines. There's nothing more annoying that you get to a braking zone and suddenly someone is calling you like, God damn it, not now.
Shut up.
Yeah, it's like you're about to land on the aircraft carrier, and then Tower is telling you, hey, you're clear to land. I know I'm about to land.
That's right. And we've talked about this on previous versions of this podcast, where it's very much a right brain activity, where your language is not something you want to be dealing with when you're processing in parallel, not in series. So exactly. Yeah. Funny that you say that.
You live to embrace risk in the air, on the slopes, and anywhere your determination takes you. But when it comes to the drinking water that fuels your adventures, you're not looking to take chances.
With cutting-edge filtration that can target contaminants as small as a single atom, Culligan's reverse osmosis filtration systems deliver the next-level hydration you need to keep working at peak performance, whatever the day brings.
Get started by scheduling your free water test at Culligan.com.
I suppose that there's a lot of strategy in terms of when you go into the pit. It has to do obviously with fuel, but tires as well. And so it's just when the right time is, or when there's a yellow flag or something. I mean, that's quite a decision. Is that a mutual decision, or are they telling you, come on in?
That's one of the big differences between Formula One and IndyCar. Formula One, pretty much all the strategy are decided before the race. Since 2011, 10, 11, we don't refuel the cars. So you start with what you start, you have to go to the end of the race. So it's never going to be a fuel thing. It's always going to be a tire thing. And they're running like crazy amount of simulation behind the scene to know when is the best time to pit. And if there's a yellow, yes, you take it because the pit don't close. In IndyCar, you have an 18-gallon fuel tank. The pit closes when it's a yellow. So the tires are actually less important than your fuel. You really want to try to go to the end of your fuel, and the last stop is when can I get home, right? So is it 28 laps to the end? Is it 30 laps to the end? Can I save a bit more fuel than my friends and pit on lap 31 to go? There's a yellow coming on lap 30. You're king of the world. If you stayed out, you're dead last.
That's amazing. So, but I was going to ask about the pit stops themselves, because I had Romain the opportunity to sit right above the pit for the aero racing team during one of the Indy 500s. And that was just an eye-watering experience to see how those cars come in, screech to a halt, and I mean, they're gone in no time. So can you talk to us about, the consideration? We already talked about going into the pit, but what about the keys to a successful stop? Obviously, it has a lot to do with the crew.
Yeah, crew is very important. The fueler is the one that's going to take the most time. So if the fueler can be plugged in less than 0.4 of a second, that's really, really good. And then your fuel takes between 6.8 to 7.2 seconds to fuel, right? So your tires have to be done in that time. So then it's all about going fast, but doing it slowly. So you don't lose a nut. So you don't do the wheel wrong. Then, you don't drop the car when the wheels are not tight. It's about precision and remembering sometimes that slow is faster. But, when you're leading the Indy 500, try to tell that to yourself.
I'd like to circle back to this concept that in an F1 race, the strategy is all set before the race. So that doesn't give you a lot of flexibility during the race to adjust to surprises and perhaps other people's strategy. So how does that all play out?
Yeah, no, there's very, very little surprise in strategy in Formula One. You have like plan A, B, C, and D prior to the race with different stops, and tire you're going to put on, like tire compounds, soft, medium, or hard. But it's all predetermined on Sunday morning prior to the race. So that's why you very often see a lot of people doing the same thing.
But if you know the other teams really well, you kind of know the strategies that they employ. And so isn't it sort of hard to out-strategize or maneuver your opponents if it's so, I don't want to say it's rigid, but it's so sort of preformed before the race?
Well, the problem is that you know exactly your tire wear, your tire degradation. So are you losing a tenth of a lap or using 100 per lap? You can make 30 or 40 laps on the tires, and then you put that all in the simulation and it's going to give you the fastest race time. And that's what everyone's going for, because at the end, it's 305 kilometers that every Formula One race is about the same, apart from Monaco, which is 250. How can you get that distance the fastest? And everyone tends to go that way.
So that's fascinating to me that they're doing simulations actively during the race. Is there any artificial intelligence creeping into that, or is it sort of formulaic?
No, they're using it more and more. They're using all technology that they can use, as much data as they can use. They put the everything, all the climatics, environment, air pressure, temperature, chance of rain, how many laps were done, and the simulation keeps evolving, because sometimes you go in a race thinking you're going to lose 0.2 a lap on tire degradation, and you end up only losing a tenth per lap. So that completely changes your strategy of how far you can go. So that's what they're monitoring. They look at the tire temperature. When the tire temperature starts to drop, that means you're running out of rubber, and that means you're getting close to running out of tires. So they have all those data going into the computer, and the thing runs 1,000 simulations per minute and come up with, at any time, the best outcome.
Wow, that's amazing.
So when we're our dynamic flight time of flying in shuttle is up and down during launch and reentry, and we've got to react in an instant if there's something that goes wrong. So we've got these checklists that you immediately go to based on certain failures and so forth. Do you have things like that in the car, and if things can go wrong in the car during a race when you're like flying through along the track at some incredible speed? How do you manage those kinds of failures or those kind of contingencies when things aren't going so well?
That's where you have the team and the radio, and they basically tell you what to do. Fail, Foxtrot 39, okay, or whatever. One of the very common problem we have is we lose a wheel speed sensor. And you're going to say, well, it doesn't really matter. You don't have a speedometer in the car. No, but the gearbox has got sync gears and synchronized gear. And if you lose a wheel speed sensor, they don't know where they are anymore. So the gearbox cannot do the seamless shift. And you lose about a second per lap. So you very quickly have to disable that sensor. So the gearbox reads out of the other one and don't take that into account. So that happens very, very often.
So they have the contingency list.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
You're passionate about pushing yourself to always be better. Culligan's water experts feel the same.
That's why their smart reverse osmosis filtration systems do more than deliver ultra refreshing, pure tasting water. Their app also lets you set drinking water goals, seek water quality information, and get filter change alerts. And with cleaner, safer, great tasting water available right from the tap, you can also feel good about all those single-use plastic bottles you're saving from landfills.
Get started with water you love today. Schedule your free water test at culligan.com.
So let's talk about Bahrain. I don't know if you like reliving that very often, but in 2020, you probably had one of the most shocking crashes of the modern era. Yeah. How did that happen? What was going through your mind? And how did you get out of that car?
Well, I pulled myself out of it as much as I could. It took me a little longer than it should have. For my wife, for my kids, for my hands. Took me 28 seconds, I think, to jump out of that car. It was stuck on the guardrail, and there was a very, very tiny place for me to jump out. So what's happening through your head is that you don't want to die and you want to survive, and you have to find a solution. So I guess you'd never know if you have a survival instinct or not until you discover that you have one. And I think I do.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's amazing. So how did you go about rebuilding your confidence, or did you even have to?
There was always, like, I was in my hospital bed, and the first target was to race the week after. But that became very clearly that was not going to be possible. So then it was 2 weeks after, there was the last race in Formula One, and I tried everything I could to go to that race until the doctor told me, yes, potentially you can, but if anything happens on your hands or any, we may have to remove your hand from your body. So at that point, I was like, well, maybe it's not worth it, and I'll wait a few months before I jump back in a race car. But I kind of told my friend and family that I was maybe going to take a break. That was a lie, just to make them feel better.
That's good.
Yeah, I was never going to stop.
So you've had a pretty decently long career, obviously migrating into the pinnacle of the sport in several areas. How has your approach to taking risk changed? I'm just guessing here that when you were younger, there was more of a go for it attitude, and now that you're older, you might give a guy an extra inch at 200 miles an hour that you might not have given when he was younger. Any reflections on that as you've gotten more experienced?
I don't think I give him more inch. What I think is that I think more about making a move, but once I've decided that and committed to a move, that hasn't changed. I think there's nothing worse than going halfway through something. That's where you have problems. Either you commit, either you bait out of it, but in between is never good.
That's always a bad place to be. Yeah. So we've talked already about the fact that you've raced, between IndyCar, F1, and others, and you just completed the Rolex 24-hour race in Daytona. So can you talk a little bit about the different culture of competition and safety and so forth between these different series and pros and cons, or how well it works?
Yeah, I've started doing endurance racing in 2022, I think. I've actually done it in 2010, but back at it in 22. And it's very different because you share the car with 2 or 3 more teammates. And it's not about pure performance for yourself, right? You have to go fast, but it's how the whole crew goes fast. And I may like a car that is very specific in one way. My teammate may not like it. So it's all about compromise and creating a team that work well together. It's fantastic when you manage to do that. It's just a great feeling. And 24 hours, it's a fun race. You start there, then you go into the night, and then the morning comes, and you think you're almost done, but no, you still have 9 hours to go. And then hopefully you see the checkered flag. So we did not this year. We got crashed into early in the race, and we had to retire the car. But I really love it. And there's 3 endurance races in the US every year. There's the Daytona, Sebring 12 hours, and then Petit Le Mans back in October. And I looked at my calendar. I'm free for Petit Le Mans, so may do it.
How do you split the driving up? Do you have like 2 or 3 or 4 hour shifts and then just keep rotating? Because you have to be able to stay alert and at least get some rest in between your driving shifts, right?
Yeah, ideally you do 2 or triple stints. So stint is 45 to 55 minutes. You normally do 2 or 3 and then get the next guy in. And then also after that, you just start to lose a little bit of, focus, and it gets hot in the car, and you don't have food, and it's just, yeah.
Do you sleep at all in between?
Yeah, I sleep really well. So I just go shower, eat, sleep, back.
Sounds like fun, actually.
One of the things we've asked some of our risk takers in various sports and the like is whether you have any sort of unique rituals, something you do right before you walk out onto the line there, or a particular way you like to relax after it's over. Any unique Romain rituals you've got? Like drink a thing of milk or something? I don't know.
No, I always get dressed the same way, and I always jump in the car from the right-hand side. is it a ritual or is it a routine that gets me into the zone? I cannot answer that question. I used to have one underwear that I would wear on Friday, one for Saturday, and one for Sunday. And once I forgot those and I won the race. I was like, well, I guess they weren't that lucky. So
had nothing to do with it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You must have simulators though that also that are there simulators for every kind of race you do, or is it only for the high end, F1 Indy stuff?
It's mainly high end, but we also Daytona, we had a simulator. We work with Ford Racing, and they have a great simulator up in Charlotte. IndyCar Honda simulator is in Indianapolis. I have a small one at home, but there's nothing you can work on really from home. So those big video game, I like to call them, are actually very helpful to set up the cars. I don't think they bring me anything as a driver, but to make the car faster, they're definitely a very good tool.
So as we've discussed, you've been racing in a lot of different fora with a lot of different cars. Are there any aspects of racing that you've not yet experienced that you'd really like to? What's left?
Not a lot, right? I've done Formula One, I've done IndyCar, I've done endurance racing, I've done Le Mans 24 Hours, I've done Indy 500, I've done Monaco Grand Prix, I've done ice racing. I've never done anything in the desert, like a Paris-Dakar or something like that. I wanted when I was a child. I'm not so sure about sleeping in a tent in the middle of the desert is my cup of tea. I'll think twice about it. I just love racing. In Australia, there's that race, Bathurst, the Mont Panorama, that I like to do in a V8 supercar one day because I've been watching that race since I'm a kid. So there's still some races I want to compete in, and hopefully I'll have that chance before I retire.
So, Romain, you probably know this, but World War I fighter race, Eddie Rickenbacker was also a famous race car driver who competed several times in the Indy 500, which you yourself have done, twice, I think. The famous World War I fighter pilot, Manfred von Richthofen, said, he was the Red Baron, right? He said, it's not the crate that matters, it's who flies it. So I want to ask you, how do you assign the relative importance of car and driver to the success of a racing team? I know it's a hard question.
No, it's actually quite simple. In Formula One, the car does 98% of the work, the driver does too. You have to think that there's 20 drivers in the world. I don't know how many people go in space every year, but it may be more than people driving Formula One car. So I think, you're already at top of your game. The difference between each is really the car. In IndyCar, it's a little bit different. I think that the driver has a bigger input, except at the Indy 500. Well, if you try to drive the car, you finish in a wall. The car has to drive you. You're just in there, but you're not. The car is fast or slow. It's not the driver. And that's something that is very hard to apprehend and understand when you come from Europe.
So I got another question. Everyone knows about the movie, and you probably knew we were going to ask you about this, F1. I know from my own experience, because I was at Top Gun when they made that first Top Gun movie, that it sort of dramatized the business, but at the same time, it carried kind of a kernel of realism. Have you seen the film, and what did you think? And is it crazy or cringeworthy, or did you like it?
I have not watched it, to be honest. I think it may be a little bit too Hollywood. So that's what I heard from my friends that watched it. And
okay,
I know they try the best they can, but
no, they do that with space movies a lot. I totally get it.
Yeah. I'm sure they do on space movie. I mean, it looks great when you don't know anything about it. You're like, oh my God, this is like this and like that. But I'm sure that when you've lived it, it's like, it's not quite like this.
No.
And one of the hard things about it, and this was hard in the first Top Gun movie, is capturing the true violence of the sport, as it were. The camera just can't necessarily. They did a better job in the second movie than they did in the first one, but it's hard to really get that real feel, right? Pulling 5Gs going around a corner is not something that the movie really would capture very well, I guess.
No.
As we wind down, one of the things we'd like to ask is if there's anything that you want the general public to know about race car drivers that they may not already know.
We're not crazy. I think we love speed, we love competition, but I think everything we do is as calculated as it can be. Of course, there's a risk into it, like landing on an aircraft carrier, like going in space. You calculate as much as you can. You know there's a risk in it, but you're not crazy by doing it. And it's funny because a lot of people tell you, you're crazy. not really. You know, my cars are made to go that fast. The track is safe to be that fast. I think someone that drives like a nuts on the roadway is way more crazy than a race car driver that actually does that for living and in an environment that is safe.
Yeah, it must drive you crazy to be on the highway in America. I mean, good heavens. We interviewed a truck driver a few times ago, and he was like, hey, the biggest risk for me is those four-wheel drivers. But amazing. So just out of curiosity, what's your next race, Romain?
It's going to be St. Petersburg, Florida in about two weeks. First race of the IndyCar Championship. And then the week after, we're in Phoenix. The week after, I think we're in Dallas. A busy couple of months coming ahead.
It's a brutal travel schedule, isn't it? That IndyCar circuit.
Yeah, we have 18 races this year. As I said, luckily we don't travel outside the US, only once in Canada. So that makes it a lot easier. Well, I'm adding as well 9 Formula One races. So I'm also going to Bahrain for Formula One. I'll do Miami, of course, but then I'm also going to Brazil, to Baku, to Madrid, Spain. So I'll have a busy, I think 30 weekends away from home. So
wow.
Yeah, I like keeping things busy.
So you were talking about superstition a minute ago. Here's a good superstition for you. About almost 70 episodes ago, Sandra and I interviewed Joseph Newgarden. And since then, he won the Indy 500 twice. So you're due, okay?
I'll take it. I promise I'll take it.
Well, look, thank you so much, Romain. This has really been a fun interview for us. We love talking to people like you. It's been terrific. And we really wish you the best. You don't need luck, but the best luck. And be safe out there. And we'll definitely be following you this season in IndyCar.
Yeah,
thank you for your
so
time.
much. And
Okay.
You always need luck. Take it.
Okay. All right.
Certainly doesn't hurt.
That was race car driver Romain Grosjean. I'm Sandy Winnefeld.
And I'm Sandra Magnus. Thanks again to Culligan for sponsoring this episode. Get exceptional water for exceptional performance. Learn more at Culligan.com.
We'd also like to thank our producers, Podigy, who do such a fine job of making us and our guests sound our best.
And finally, thanks to you, our listeners, who have been with us now for 7 seasons.
We hope you'll join us soon for yet another season of The Adrenaline Zone.